Hello. This one's called the Pig Balloon Incident. So, Layton County, Laytonville, Mendocino County, California, 1995. This story is about belief, at least I think it is. Gloria, 3.5, is with me at the picnic, the 3-day benefit concert the Hog Farm used to throw for themselves to pay for the land, Black Oak Ranch. I've been asked to make a giant floating pig, like a Mexican piggy bank. I got a little carried away, and the nice round piggy bank piggy is now a hairy wild boar with terrible gleam in his eye, diving toward the crowd. But no matter, at least he was friendlier than the one I made the year before, truly horrific with moving eyes and tongue. And which did dive or plummet really into the crowd, giving me a bad moment because there were quite a few mothers with babes in arms below. In the event, it landed on an old hippie halfway into a gallon of wine who was okay with his moment in the spotlight. To avoid this kind of problem, this year I made a big bunch of balloons to haul off the pig-shaped balloon made of waterbed plastic. Everything was going smoothly, or as smoothly as you would expect working with a bunch of 3-foot floating objects with a 3-year-old for a helper, handing you tape, asking important questions. Success. The piggy had all the extra lift it needed to resist getting blown sideways by the wind. I stepped back to admire it, Gloria on my hip. Just then Wavy Gravy walked by, headed straight for the tether line, got it caught on his ankle, broke it, and kept on going, never noticing. I was glad it was Wavy. It's hard to get mad at Wavy. The pig took off like a rocket. Get the balloon, Dad. I can't, it wants to go up. Make it come back. I had to think fast. I was afraid she would start asking for her mother, and her mother was 157 miles away. It will come back. When it gets really high, the balloon will break and it will come down again. I didn't go into where this would happen. The balloon was tiny now, moving north at 5,000 feet and rising. We went on with other things while we waited for the balloon to come back. It was easy for me to be patient. I was hoping for a slow fade on the matter, but Gloria kept checking the sky every now and then. About an hour later, we were walking by the spot where we put the piggy together, and suddenly Gloria started jumping around on my hip and saying something, pointing to the ground. There, on the ground, was the nozzle of one of the balloons, tied in a knot. My mind reeled around, trying to understand what happened. Had a balloon broken when we were doing it? Assembly? No, I would have noticed that. What? The only simple explanation is that it had caught another layer of air that brought it back our way, exploded, and fallen down to the exact spot where it had taken off. Gloria was happy with the outcome. Just thinking this is something that can happen. I felt a little sheepish taking any credit, even in my role as father/demigod to a 3-year-old. But I'd said it would pop and then come down. And more importantly, I think she had believed me. Definitely one of those, in case you think you're doing it all alone moments. I love that one. And night when it was completely back, you could only see the woods and the field out of the corner of your eye. It was smooth as a field of snow, never a pothole, never plowing into the center. I don't know how, but night after night when I came home from work, it was the same. Hmm. Oh my. You just gotta do it. That's all there is to it. This one's called Leaving Florida. So, it was in 1974. I hated to leave Florida. It was there that I was truly an adult for the first time, or felt that way. Anyway, by comparison, always before, I was in the sway of something. College, New York City, the group I lived with. But here was the first place that felt like home. Dark and cold up north sent me into a spin so that every year by January I was holed up in bed with a seed catalog, refusing to get up. When I came down ahead of the family to get set up, I lived outside at the end of a sand road that was rutted and potholed and had kept away from the middle where the sand was soft. At night, when it was completely black, you could only see the woods and the field out of the corner of your eye. It was as smooth as a field of snow, never a pothole, never plowing into the center. I don't know how, but night after night, when I came home from work, it was the same. We lived on a little lake, and in the early morning, I would take the baby out early so he wouldn't wake the others, and put him in the bow of the rowboat, and out we'd paddle, some days greeting the dawn, him wide awake, him wide-eyed, captured by the rocking. So when I left in the middle of the night, everything I owned, an enormous trunk to take the bus up north, it was with a heavy heart. The bus was stopping by the side of the road a few blocks away by the gas station at the crossroads in the tiny town where we lived. Since I couldn't carry the trunk, I determined to make a frame, a long T with a crossbar for a handle, and drag it that way. Once the trunk was on it, I looked like an itinerant penitente dragging a cross behind him. It started out fine on the first part, the sand road that led up to the highway. Even if the trunk felt much heavier than I expected, I really had to lean into it. I had to laugh. It was starting to look biblical with the cross and the tortured progress. When I got to the road, it was all I could do to move at all. I was worried about getting up to the crossroads in town. Then something let go, and it was suddenly easier. I stopped and looked back. There was a line gouged in the road where we had been. Somehow I hadn't noticed that the nail I used went all the way through and then some, leaving a ridiculous symbolic spike like the claw of a cartoon cat raking great tears in a rug to keep from getting dragged off somewhere. We backtrack now to the time when we were all together. David and Carlton, who were Nick's play uncles and our hosts of sorts. David, who had to have the Rolling Stones playing continually, and I mean all the time, when he was awake. That is until the night he mistook the lid of the record player for the toilet lid, and with a terrific buzzing sound, retired the record player for 2 blissful months until the day a guest idly reached over and turned it back on, not knowing its history, now dried out. The sweet Carlton, the 13th and last child of Leroy, now 75, took in as a foster child. We all lived together, Cindy, myself, and the 2 boys, David and Carlton, in a tiny cabin like elves under a gorse bush, only to scale, so it was in a world within a world under a giant live oak tree. David and Carlton and I all worked for or with Leroy building docks on the lakes. It was like being in a very nice work detail because Leroy would call out every step of the operation from his position in the water, oftentimes just his head visible, like a great muskrat. Now, son, put your nail higher. Yeah, that's it. You basically didn't have to think at all. Very nice on the morning we were sweating out last night's beer. And then I was completely alone, sending the boys up north, me in the garden cooking outside on a fire, the electricity off, fetching water in a milk can from a faucet up the street, and drawing every night for Eli, blind to everything in the room but the pool of light from a kerosene lamp, sending in pictures of everything, 3x5 cards, so his mother could teach him sign language. When people from Findhorn came to town, Findhorn, where they were into divas and nature spirits and grew huge outsized vegetables with help from the same. People asked them, so what kind of fertilizer did you use? 10, 20? All this was still new to me. Friends leaving town asked me to return a book to the library. It was about dowsing. I found out I could do it. I said, as a matter of fact, I learned when I was up north and the neighbors wanted to dig a well and they got this old gent to douse. And he showed them and they were able to show us, me anyway, and we dug a well. And I'm here to tell you, if you have a trouble with concentration, just get in a hole in the ground. All you can think about is getting the dirt in the bucket and getting the bucket out of there and back down so you can put more dirt in the bucket. I mean, it's amazing. And it just gets more intense as you go down. And we got down to 20 feet, and then all my friends wanted to give up. So that was that. But anyway, I shortened it for this when I wrote this. I found out I could do it. That was weird enough just seeing that every place I put a sculpture in the garden was a center and all the paths were on path lines. Path lines make, oops, sorry about that, folks. Path lines make the stick go up. Nevertheless, it's a stick and it goes up in the same place every time. It's visible, not a diva or a sprite or any other rank and file of spirit folk. I quit my regular job house painting and tried to get by economizing and doing odd jobs. And a couple of days a week, working in a gentleman's cattle farm right outside of town. It was owned by a retired Air Force colonel who we never saw. So we had the run of the place, and we grew immense marijuana plants back where the property gave onto a swamp. We'd go out to find lost cattle and water them. It was there dragging the pasture with a piece of chain fence to break up the cow patties that I first noticed that reflections in the pond were not simply the view of the far side turned upside down. They were the view you'd have halfway to there and at the level of the water. So you'd be looking up under the skirt of the live oak in the reflection while you looked at them from the side in the straight view. A minor thing, but it escaped me. It was there that Tommy killed a corn snake. I'm not sure why, since it was harmless, coiling and puffing itself up till its scales stuck out and then rubbing them back and forth like a rattlesnake. And there was Amos, a nearly 2,000-pound bull who hadn't been weaned right and was kept in the barn separately so he wouldn't go out and suckle the entire herd dry. Where Amos took a sudden exception to being moved to another stall, which is to say an exception to being whacked with a 2x4, and where he turned and charged Tommy, catching him square in the chest. So Tommy's teeth flew out of his mouth, and his hat shot up, and his glasses also made a trip. Then Amos turned to me. I ran so fast, it looked like the earth turned to the side so I could run full tilt under the gate to get out of there. Yeah, amazing. It was an emergency, so don't waste time going, no, it's a horizontal view. I just stayed a vertical view the whole time. I was like, I don't care. I'm just going under the gate. I turned around and was like, "Oh, you okay?" Tommy nearly got killed, and except for being by the part of the stall that gave instead of by a post, he would have. 2 days later, I was holding a can of grain to lure Amos into a trailer to be shipped out of there. That's when Tommy killed a snake to expedite that operation. So it was during this time when I was frankly quite hungry. Sometimes I walked out to an acquaintance's house to mow the lawn. He didn't take the hint that I needed something to eat right away. So halfway through mowing the lawn, I was lightheaded. I stopped for a moment, and like those climactic moments in a movie when the soundtrack goes silent, began to see many colored mist moving through the air. It was bursting out of plants like steam from a cooked pea on the end of a fork, but bigger, grainier, more colors, twinkling blue and red mostly, some greens and purple, all at the same threshold, like the fugitive things you see skipping around when you stare at the ceiling or an empty sky. Against the sky, whole trees were bursting forth with whatever it was, magnetism, life. And there was a background field of it, too, that moved right through the large trees undisturbed. In the shade, the bush was busy with points of light no bigger than moths, shaped like a vortex, that swooped up to a specific place on the bush, busied around as if tending it in some way, and then swooshed off. There were perhaps 20 at a time, coming and going, like the action in a beehive. I knew the Findhorn people were sincere, but had reserved some skepticism nevertheless. Well, now what? I'd had only one vision in my life, and that was when I was a child. I think I was 7 or 8, when out of nowhere, down at the end of my vegetable patch, where I had a fork and was in the process, never finished, of digging an underground lair. There was a rotting stump, and overlaid on it was a soft, shimmering, highly detailed vision, a presence really, of Saul on his throne and David sitting on the ground beside him. Even then, I would have thought it was an imagining from my storybook, except that it was markedly different. Although I hadn't worked out the specifics or where the focus was, I knew a kind of all-over sexual feeling, or to put it another way, I knew what flirting was, and it didn't go on openly in church. In fact, there was none of that kind of possessed in church. Church was about getting a lofty drag going, the word joy, etc., on a falling, dying cadence, as if to suggest joy, loss, or leave taking. Saul looked forbidding, grumpy. But David, I remember his skin, the skin of his bare arm, almost golden and with a sheen like it would get in hot humid weather. He looked right at me for a moment, delighted, inviting, and very alive, alive to himself, and alive to himself. This didn't last very long, but it was confronting, like a true meeting. It was a talisman always through the rest of the slog and loneliness of the Catholic story. So when the bus came at 4:30, while it was still black, even though I had been scared when I first saw Florida, so forlorn looking with the warped, mildewed, and scorched cabins up on posts, not even touching the ground, like something you'd see in a prison camp, I thought, and not used to seeing light under buildings. It looked so temporary, and even though the Spanish Moors looked like funeral crepe, it beckoned in an eerie way, and a voice said when I first saw it, "Please, God, don't let me die here." Really, it said that, and quite distinctly. I was not dying and did not want to leave, and part of me didn't leave for years. Nowhere felt like home. I was in California for years before someone asked, "Well, have you put down roots?" And I paused and realized that I had. Did I do that? Oh my God. Oh, brother. Hmm. Hello. What am I going to do about that? Nothing. All right. That's I believe that's better. Lobster mummy. This is 1970 in Lower East Side, Manhattan. Once, when romance was unraveling, I brought home a lobster for my sweetheart. She wasn't there. I put it in the deep side of the sink. It was covered by a drain board. I went out. Much later, she was home now, screaming. I went out. I called much later. She was home now, screaming, "There's a dead lobster in my sink." The water had drained away. I was sad for my misguided love offering. I was overwrought. It was a bad sign. I wrapped the lobster in foil. It took the shape of an Egyptian mummy. I felt guilty about letting it die. I didn't want to chuck it in the garbage. Only burial would do. But where? I took it to the roof and sailed it off to the garden below, then went and began digging that spot where it had landed. I went down almost as far as I could reach and then hit something, a small box. Inside was an ankh and a tiny Heckmet charm. Then came up bones. For a moment, my mind went to a dreadful possibility. And then, of course, I have buried their cat here. I put everything back and then added the lobster mummy. 2 weeks later, when I departed for the last time, my sweetheart threw a bowling ball after me, which bounced once and then crashed into the neighbor's door, cracking it in two. Yeah. Hmm. C'est une magie qui donne un jour de flèche comme des poissons. Et on devait doucer, examiner, le chouchant, l'amour, le temps. I'm doing it. Oh, fuck, dude. It didn't. Didn't. No, no. Wait, wait, wait. Hmm. Two miniature portraits. A stampede and a departure. This one comes with an incantation. I don't know. That's how I wrote it. I have a magic mirror, and in it eyes flash like fishes. They sweep back and forth, surveying an invisible crowd, looking for the lover who is late. So, I do it all over again in French, but not today. At the Museum of Art in Baltimore, the Walters Collection, I think it's supposed to be called, my great aunt's portrait was where my parents put it when they moved to a house that was too small for it. And it was at the top of the stairway for a while, which I think she would have been very happy about. She was the sacred monster of the family. Anyway, her doctor told her that she should go out in the afternoon, go see a movie or something. He also told her that she should take a nap at 3 o'clock. So every afternoon, we would head out to the one theater in Charlottesville that she would go to because she got in a fight with the manager of the other one and see whatever was playing. If it played for 6 weeks, well, then we'd see it for 6 weeks. Well, we went there a couple times a month, but I saw Gigi. I feel like I saw it a lot, more than that, twice. The 3 o'clock nap must be obeyed. There was never any pleading, never any gainsaying with Doni. It was a nickname. It was Eugenie, Richard Widmark, or whoever, Richard Widmark, or whoever, would be left hanging from a cliff, music swelling. We get up, and people would be like bobbing this way and that to try to see the movie. It's a valuable lesson. Just because you paid for your ticket doesn't mean you have to put up with the whole goddamn thing. You are the protagonist of every situation you get into. Brother. And then another one is a Bill Graham. I always seem to be doing something wrong whenever I bump into him. I was like in the deli next door to the theater in New York, and I saw a jar of black clover honey. I was like, oh, I gotta have a look at this. And I took the lid off, and Bill pops around the corner. He's like, what are you doing? And I'm like, oh, nothing. And same thing at a concert. I don't remember that one though. So this one is sometimes called, this one probably only happened once. In October 1991, Golden Gate Park. It was at the memorial for Bill when his helicopter ran into a power electric tower and browned out all of San Jose. Anyway, I had a place I had to go. I had to go to a baby shower, so I slipped away. A white carnation fell at my feet. Well, I was guessing how this could happen. I was distracted by a noise I couldn't identify. Very deep building and approaching. I just slipped away early from a memorial concert for Bill Graham and was still getting my bearings. And then another flower fell, and another. I looked up. A herd of bison were stampeding directly toward me. The next moment stretched out of time back to my childhood. TV. That's where I heard that sound before. Stampede, quick. In case of bison stampede, the bisons wheeled away. More flowers and more flowers fell. Tens of flowers, 20s of flowers, all straight down at the same stately pace. Kind of like a badminton birdie. The bison definitely seemed freaked out by them, running around in a jerky circle in their pen. I didn't blame them really. It wasn't frogs falling from the sky, but still, flowers falling out of the clear blue sky. When? Oh, wait a minute. I looked back at the concert. The Otis Spunkmeyer DC-3 was over the crowd, and a gazillion carnations were getting shoved out the cargo bay. Bill Graham presents, up to the old tricks. Fooled me this time, so it resolved. A beautiful, improbable, stubborn Bill. My brother. Back to the all right. Hmm. What the fuck is going on? Did I move them all to the desktop? No, I don't care.
Uh, your voice bells forth, a momentary hush falls. The light sways, seeming to create space within space, and then you pass, the sky turning in procession, and the day begins again with transfigured eyes.
What the fuck is
And in
playing?
that gleaming, that morning light, when I am open, I reach for your memory, sure that you're safe now. And then I'm back, the river of shadows, sweeping you away. I was certain it would happen years from now, not so soon. When you left all the place.
All right. Well, oh my God, where the fuck? Hmm.